The film begins in May 2020. In the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, Connecticut lead representative Claire DeBella is directing an at-home meeting when she gets a baffling bundle at Alpha Ventures. Researcher Lionel Toussaint is in a video call with his higher-ups, who are beseeching him not to approve the crazy thoughts of his chief, Miles Bron, as he is set to seriously endanger lives with his most recent creation. Possibly Lionel is then sent similar bundle from Miles. At a party, supermodel Birdie J is being dealt with by her put-upon partner Steak, as they get the bundle from Miles too, and Steak is attempting to get a smashed Birdie far from her telephone at last. Men's Privileges jerk star Duke Cody is making a video with his sweetheart Bourbon when his mom lets him know he got the bundle as well. Claire, Lionel, Birdie, and Duke all jump on a call to attempt to sort out some way to open the crate. After Lionel sorts it out, the remainder of the container is a progression of riddles that lead to a model of a structure and a greeting from Miles to his confidential island for the end of the week. The last individual to get the bundle is Cassandra Andy Brand, who essentially crushes the container to pieces prior to tracking down the greeting. Analyst Benoit Blanc is in a bath on a video visit with Natasha Lyonne, Angela Lansbury, Stephen Sondheim, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, every one of whom express worry for Blanc not leaving his in the middle between cases. Blanc's accomplice Philip then, at that point, calls Blanc to illuminate him that he has gotten a crate. Blanc later joins the visitors as they show up at a harbor for a boat that will take them to Miles Island. Claire, Birdie, Lionel, and Duke express energy at meeting Blanc for his well-known cases. Not long before they leave, they are told by Miles' partner to take in a sanitizer that will permit them to cooperate without utilizing veils as they get on the boat. Everyone is dazed to see Andy showing up on the boat. Blanc is told by Lionel that everybody is shocked that Andy is there since she had a somewhat notorious run-in with Miles when he cut her out of a significant agreement. The visitors show up on Miles Island, where he shows up to welcome them, alongside an irregular visitor he is named D-Roll. Miles then, at that point, flaunts his home, the Glass Onion, which is named after a bar that the gathering used to hang out at. He reports that they will participate in a homicide secret where he is the person in question, and he gives them generally exceptional wristbands to their rooms. And Blanc seems to meet Andy. Interestingly, Blanc then, at that point, goes to Miles' office. As it just so happens, Miles didn't really welcome Blanc to the get-together, however he actually got the greeting. The visitors get gotten comfortable and go for the pool, drinking spiked fermented teas. During this time, Bourbon has all the earmarks of being drawing near to Miles. Even with Duke taking note, Steak approaches Birdie and advises her to converse with Miles about an individual matter. And Birdie remarks on how Miles was no one worth mentioning when she met him. Miles plunks down to give a little discourse to the gathering before Andy approaches rail against him and the others, since she realizes that they are locking onto Miles since he backs every one of their endeavors. Claire's spat legislative issues, Duke's jerk profession, and so forth. Steak then, at that point, goes to track down Miles and asks him herself to lay off of Birdie, as the matter worries a sweatshop in Bangladesh that made the garments she produces, yet Miles isn't withdrawing. Blanc endeavors to smoke a stogie, however is frightened away by a caution. He then sees Duke getting Miles and Bourbon attaching in his room. Around evening time, Miles assembles individuals around for drinks prior to plunking down for the secret. Similarly, as the secret starts, Blanc very quickly finds that the eventual killer is Birdie, as she is situated straightforwardly opposite a sculpture that has a period-delivered crossbow that would strike Miles. Adequately sure the bolt kills Miles, which irritates him yet intrigues every other person. Miles goes to tidy himself up, with Blanc following him and saying sorry for destroying the astonishment unexpectedly early, despite the fact that he clarifies that he has united individuals who all have real thought processes to need him dead. Blanc then, at that point, sees a relic that Miles has outlined, which is a mixed drink napkin where he probably composed the subtleties that prompted Alpha's turn of events. While the visitors keep drinking, Miles brings up that he has the genuine Mona Lisa borrowed from the Louvre since they need cash because of the pandemic. It has a delicate caution framework with a safeguard out in the open. Miles then, at that point, accumulates everybody for another show. He has fostered a new, untested fuel source called Clear, which the whole Glass Onion is controlled by. Lionel lets him know this is insane on the grounds that he wanted no less than 2 years to test Clear. Before it very well may be revealed to general society. Andy calls Miles out once more, and she is defied by Duke, who tells her that she basically lost over the long haul. She leaves the party. Everybody proceeds to party, and Duke welcomes Miles' thoughtfulness regarding something on his telephone, which says could be a unique advantage and would score Duke a sought-after spot in Alpha News. Miles fixes a beverage and passes it to Duke, who starts stifling minutes after the fact. The others endeavor to help, however Duke bites the dust. The gathering begins to search for his telephone, However, it's not possible for anyone to find it since it has quit blaring from warnings. Individuals start to think that Miles was the objective and that somebody intended to harm him, and they likewise notice that the weapon that Duke generally has in his possession is absent. At the point when 10 o'clock rolls in, the lights generally around the spot start to go out. Bourbon comes in shouting that Andy scoured their room. Blanc pursues Andy in the murkiness, yet similarly as they start talking, a concealed aggressor discharges a firearm, hitting Andy. The remainder of the gathering emerges and sees Blanc remaining over her. He then assembles the gathering in another room. The film then bounces back to when Blanc got the greeting. He was visited by Helen, Andy's twin sister, who presented to him the crushed-up puzzle box. Helen lets Blanc know that Andy is said to have ended it all days sooner, yet she accepts that Andy was killed. Miles had removed Andy of the clear bargain since she realized it was possibly risky, yet he went despite her good faith and got Claire, Lionel, Duke, and Bertie to affirm against Andy to remove her of Alpha. Totally. Helen brings up that them four were all initially dear companions with Andy and that it was her who acquainted them with Miles, whom they generally viewed as a failure just when he came to the top and aided them out. Did they out of nowhere care for him and Andy's fury? She went over the genuine mixed drink napkin, where she concocted every one of the alpha thoughts that Miles took and made look like his own. Helen thinks one about the gathering harmed Andy and passed on her body in her vehicle to make it seem to be a self-destruction, as the envelope was absent from her home and there was no self-destruction note. Blanc thinks of the possibility that he and Helen go to the island with Helen acting like Andy. In spite of her underlying protests, she can change her hair and compliment to make herself look like Andy on the boat. Duke and Bertie express treat for Andy's appearance, so Blanc mentors Helen on the most proficient method to keep away from doubt. At the point when they are on the island, Helen becomes inebriated and sneaks around on the visitors to assemble thought processes and valuable open doors. She hears Lionel and Claire discussing how their vocations are in a difficult situation with Claire, as Claire could lose possible electors for sponsorship it, and Lionel hasn't made it uncovered that Claire would be helpless to spillage, which could cause monstrous blasts. Helen likewise drops a recorder in Bertie's pack, which catches her discussion with Steak, where Bertie confesses to approving an explanation where she would assume total ownership for the Bangladesh sweatshops so Miles could remunerate her at long last. Helen addresses Bourbon and discovers that she isn't happy in that frame of mind with Duke, who simply sees her as eye candy. It likewise turns out that he requested that Bourbon tempt Miles to persuade him to let Duke on Alpha News, yet Miles doesn't need the awful press, since Duke attempted to showcase erection pills to adolescent young men. During the night party, Blanc advises Helen to start the contention that she would lose, so she can have a reason to leave the party and go through people group's rooms to search for the envelope. After Duke is killed, Bourbon gets Helen in her room and points a harpoon weapon at her, yet the lights going out offers Helen a chance to run. She and Blanc make up for lost time to one another before the aggressor takes shots at her. Helen gets by since she had one of Andy's handbooks in her possession. However, Blanc utilizes Jeremy Renner brand hot sauce to make it seem as though Helen is dead to the remainder of the gathering, which offers her a chance to proceed with her pursuit. Helen tracks down the envelope in Miles' office and she begins to get sympathies from individuals over Andy's demise, as it has recently been made public information. At that point, Blanc lets the gathering know that Miles isn't the tech virtuoso that he paints himself as. Because of his utilization of malapropisms and other boneheaded thoughts, he goes further and lets them know altogether that Miles is the genuine executioner. Regardless of him, let individuals know that Duke erroneously got the glass implied for a significant distance. He straightforwardly gave it to him and furthermore took his weapon, where he sat tight for a chance to establish the firearm and let the lights go out, which Blanc by implication gave him the plan to do. The justification behind Duke's demise was on the grounds. Days sooner, Duke was nearly hit by Miles' vehicle as he was seen leaving Andy's place. Duke, Claire, Lionel, and Bertie all went to mine Andy, however tracked down no response. Miles had killed her since he found out about the email from Lionel where Andy was holding the envelope. Helen arises, cracking everybody out and causing them to acknowledge she is Andy's twin sister. At the point when she presents the napkin to demonstrate that Andy was the genuine driving force, Miles consumes it, leaving them with zero proof. The remainder of the gathering is likewise calm to support Andy, so Helen lets them know they are shitheads. Blanc, having surrendered to disappointment, leaves Helen with a beverage. As Blanc had before said, Helen is all the more fast reasoning when intoxicated. She downs her beverage and starts to break Miles different significant things. The remainder of the gathering then joins Helen in help and starts crushing things until Helen lights a fire. She then, at that point, gives Miles the other thing that Blanc left her, an example of clear. Helen tosses it into the fire, which gets into the vents and makes a gigantic blast that obliterates the glass. Onion. Blanc and D-Roll watch from a distance while sharing stogies. Helen then, at that point, joins Blanc by the water and she shifts focus over to the sea with a fulfilled grin.